All right, tonight we're going to be looking at A.A. Allen, also referred to as the Miracle Man. Didn't put the A there, but that's all right. This is the first guy that we have done, born 1911. This is the first guy that we've done that was alive the same time I was alive. Everybody else, I was not alive when they walked this earth. This is the first guy that I was alive. Now, some of you were alive maybe prior to that, but this is my first one to do that was alive the same time that I was. So, born 1911, and he was born in Arkansas, and he has an interesting upbringing. Now, remember, all these guys really wasn't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and especially him. He was born to alcoholic parents, and they were moonshiners. And so they would give him a bottle, him and his brothers and sisters, a bottle every night to put them to sleep while they would go out there and do the moonshine. And they would also get them drunk purposely and make fun of their antics. So that was their entertainment, was getting their kids drunk and then just watch how they would do. And that's how he grew up. And at the age of 6, he was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and outdrank most people twice his age. So at 6, twice his age is 12, and he could outdrink them. How he got on the cigarettes, 2 packs a day, at 6 years old, was he would get a cigarette, light it for his mother, take a couple puffs and hand it to her. And because this is how they raised their kids. And so, you know, maybe totally different from how we were raised, but there are people out there that do this kind of stuff. And he was a recipient of that kind of parenting. And now his father, although an alcoholic, he was talented and musical, and he wasn't converted, but the Methodist church in the area used him for their services, and half the time he would go half drunk and sing and whatever it was they wanted him to do. Now here's a quote from A.A. Allen. "Every one of us grew up with a taste for liquor. 2 brothers, one died early. The oldest brother died a drunkard. Father died of drinking. The mother quit drinking before he was completely grown. But he said, my 4 sisters and I was on our way to a drunkard's grave." And so he, in the area, as well as his brothers and sisters, were known as rowdy people. But he was known as the wicked little Allen boy. So growing up around 14 years old, he had enough, and he ran away from home about 14 and took odd jobs and ended up at the cotton field trying to make a living. But everywhere he went, he was the life of the party. He too also sang and was talented and played music. So by the time he was 20, listen to this, by the time he was 20, he was a nervous wreck, meaning that he couldn't light a cigarette without holding his wrist to light it, because he would shake so much. And he, at this point, at 20 years old, also had a chest burn in his chest from a deep hacking cough. And so he finally, around this age, he says, I got to get back home and get healthy. I'm dying here. But he only goes back home to a mother who had not yet completely given up at that point of her rowdiness. They'd already separated. She already separated from the husband. But he returned back to his old habits once he got home, and his mother and he started a working bootleg still, and turned their place into a night dance hall, which drew a lot of crowds. So this was his birth, his adolescent, his childhood, adolescent, growing up. So about 23 years old, 1934. This would be around 1934. He's out partying with his friends, carousing, and he passes a church, a Methodist church, and they were having nightly services. So he took notice of that and said, "I'll go check that out." He was interested. So when he walks into the meeting, it was a Methodist. The preacher was a woman, and they knew who he was, because he was like I said, the wicked little Allen boy. And So when he walked in, they said, "Are you here because you're going to cause trouble, or are you wanting to get saved or whatever?" He goes, "No, no, no. I'm just here to check this out. If this thing's real, I want it." And lo and behold, he gets converted at that time. He goes home and he knows his sister had won a Bible in a contest somewhere hidden in the attic in some type of a trunk. So he ran up there to look for that Bible. He finds it. It's never been read, brand spanking new. He reads it from cover to cover, takes it with him everywhere. He genuinely has a conversion. And but as he started going to that Methodist church, he ended up looking around and ended up at a Pentecostal church. Really liked the services, liked how the message and the ministry and everything. And he got into a fight with the Methodist minister because they said that those people down there are crazy. And so the Methodist minister got mad at him and said, you're either a Pentecostal or you're a Methodist. And he got mad at the guy for making him even choose. He thought, why can't I just go back and forwards? So he chose the Pentecostal church and left from there. As he's going to that church, he ends up getting filled with the Spirit. About that same time, the one sister gets converted as well. So around 1934, now remember, this is also during the height of the Depression. And so there's not a lot of work. Drought hit the area. I think he was in Missouri at that time. And a friend from Colorado asked him to come out and work on a ranch. And so he goes out there, and he doesn't know anybody but the friend. And what's interesting is while he's out there in the plains, no man's land, on this ranch, there's no church. He doesn't know where there's one at, and there's no Christians. Everybody's ungodly, and he's like, I want fellowship, and there's nobody to fellowship with. So as he's crying out to God, the wind began to blow, and this leaflet or pamphlet or whatever comes flying right by him, and he picks it up, and it's a tract or a bulletin of some sort advertising a Foursquare church and having nightly meetings. Well, he knew Foursquare was Pentecostal, and that's, by the way, that's Amy Semple McPherson. She started the Foursquare denomination, and she was prior to that, of course. But anyway, he goes back to the ranch. He says, "Hey, where's this Foursquare church? I know that's going to be Pentecostal. I've got to have life. Got to be around people with life and fellowship." And these guys like, we don't have no clue where there's a church, let alone Foursquare. They said, but there's this lady, this girl up the road who claims to be a preacher. She's crazy. She might know where that church is at. So he goes up there and finds this woman, and she is studying to be a preacher. Her name's Lexi Scriven, if I'm pronouncing that right. The two become friends, and they begin studying the Bible every day. But she goes off to Bible school eventually. He returns to Missouri to help his mother, and she wants to move to Idaho. I know these are I'm just trying to get you an idea, because this is a crazy story where we're going to go. I mean, he's not called the miracle man for nothing. I mean, God really begins to start using him. So they begin to write each other, mailing letters, him and that girl. And then they realize as they're writing letters that they're falling in love. So in 1936 in Colorado, they're married, and they end up with 3 boys and a girl. So they both, I remember, she thinks she's called. She's going to be called, so she's in the ministry. He knows he's called. So they go off in the ministry. They get married with $100, a few wedding gifts, and a Model A Ford, and they start their life off and ministry together. So again, like I said, this is the Depression. There's no jobs, no promise of getting a job. But they knew one thing, and they were both called to preach. So what they would do is they'd get these meetings in these small little churches. But to get to one meeting to another, you need gasoline. They didn't have no jobs. So they would go into the woods and chop firewood, put it in the back of their trunk or whatever, and they'd sell that firewood, and then they'd make enough money to get to the next place. So they did that for a while, trusting God for supply. Then when they get to the meeting, their offerings averaged around 5 pennies. That's about all they could get out of these meetings. So there's not a lot of money going on in the ministry. You can't get rich in the ministry then, as you can't get now. Of course, some do. But people were getting saved in the meetings. Things were happening. And he has this encounter with God. And it's a powerful encounter. I'm not going to go into details because God shows him some things. It's not relevant. But all this is, you can read it. There's so much to his life. I'm really bringing it down to just a little bit, just a fraction here. So anyway, God says that his ministry is going to start having power encounters. And he tells his wife, something's going to happen in our ministry that's going to be beyond just getting souls saved. And his first meeting after that, a blind guy gets healed. So now they're seeing the manifestation of what God can do miraculously. And so his meeting starts growing, but there is no money. And so they realize they can't make a living being Assembly of God evangelists. So he goes down to Corpus Christi to take a church, thinking that he could get more money there, at least a salary, and it's consistent. And so he goes down there, and the church begins to grow. He's flamboyant, he's charismatic, and people are coming. People are getting saved. And he has this. Now remember, he's called to be an evangelist, but the reason why he walked away from that calling is because of the money. So he goes to take a pastorate. Well, he's not a pastor. He's got all this vision, he's got all this energy, and it's way too much for the church. And so the board's like always trying to keep him down. Every new vision, everything he wants to do, they're like, no, we can't do that. And then he said, well, at least let's get on radio. Let's do radio. And so he comes back and he makes a presentation on how to get on radio. And this is around 1953, I think. Maybe not. No, the end of the 40s. But anyway, they just throw the wet blanket on it, and he's just dismayed. He's like, there's got to be more to the ministry than just this. So they realized he was down in the dumps, and they said, hey, there's this guy in Dallas, Texas, who just set up a tent. His name's Oral Roberts. And you can go to that picture. And he said, why don't you go take your wife, go on vacation, hit a couple meetings, and just kind of get revived. So he takes his wife, and they go to the Oral Roberts meeting, and you can see, he's doing pretty good there. This is in Dallas, Texas. He gets there, he sees the miracles, he sees, and he says, this is what I was called to do. I'm not called to pastor. This is what I'm called to do. So he goes back to the church in Corpus Christi, and he says, hey, we need to buy a tent. We need to go put a tent somewhere. We need to have special meetings. And what do you think they do? They throw a wet blanket on it. He's like, I'm done. I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. So he comes back and he leaves. So in 1951, now we're in 1951, he decides that he's going to go on the road, but he needs to buy a tent. And he hears about, who did we just look at last week? Jack Coe just died. And so he knew he had the biggest tent, 4 more inches than Oral Roberts. So he goes to Jack Coe's wife and says, hey, what'd you do with the tent? She goes, I still have it. He goes, I want to buy it. So now A. Allen has the biggest tent, bigger than Oral Roberts. Poor Oral, these two guys beating by 4 inches or whatever. But anyway, so he ends up buying Jack Coe's tent, which I thought was really cool. And so he begins to advertise. He's got the biggest tent. He begins to advertise divine healing, salvation, and so forth and so on. He also, at that point, he goes on the radio, and his broadcast was called the Allen Revival Hour. And by 1955, he was on 17 Latin American stations and 18 American stations. He began conducting services in Mexico, Cuba, from 1955 to 59 until Castro took over, which you understand that became communist when Castro took over in Cuba. So he was doing ministry when that took place down there. But during all this time, miracles began to happen. Now, I'm not going to get into the miracles, because when we're done, we're going to watch a video, a 13-minute video that is the most profound miracle you will ever hear. It is true. And if I told you that he did this, that, and the other, I'll throw one at you. A 500-pound woman comes up to get prayed for. He lays hands on her, prays healing. She goes out in the Spirit, gets up 200 pounds lighter, and can't keep her clothes on because they keep falling off. So we're talking God really stretching the imagination of people with these miracles. Canes, crutches. There were so many canes and crutches and stretchers left behind. They would once a month have a bonfire and burn them all, rejoicing and celebrating the healing of all these people. And he also began to get on television during this time. And then enters R.W. Schambach, which that's the one we're going to look at, the video. R.W. Schambach, which you probably heard, he's an evangelist. I think he passed away. But anyway, he was very, very young in the ministry, and he became A.A. Allen's right-hand man. So that brings us up now to his ministry's growing, signs and wonders are happening, revival's breaking out in where he goes, and people are getting saved, so forth and so on. Now, he does hit some controversy, as they all do hit controversy. And one of them was the KKK was always hounding him because he didn't segregate. Back in that day, you did. And blacks couldn't sit with whites, whites couldn't sit with blacks, so forth and so on. And so he didn't play that game, and he just let everybody come in and sit where they want to sit. And so he had them on his heels at times. And he did get a lot of persecution from people. And from media, just like the rest of them. And one of the accusations that followed him was that he started drinking again, which I told you that last week. And so around 1955, in Knoxville, Tennessee, he's pulled over and arrested for drunken driving. Now, it never went to trial because he never showed up for the trial, but he forfeited his $1,000 bail and left the state. Of course, back in that day, you can leave, just don't go back to that state. But he left, and that controversy went with him. He denied it, and but the Assemblies of God, and remember Gordon Lindsay, which he's not on here, but Gordon Lindsay walked with a lot of these guys, and he was also with A.A. Allen. A.A. Allen was one of those that Gordon Lindsay used when Branham walked away, but they began to distance themselves because of this controversy. And so he denies it. He says it didn't happen. And so there's a lot of discrepancy there. I can't say, but I will tell you this. R.W. Schambach has said, I know for a fact he wasn't drinking that night. He wasn't saying that he never drank, but he wasn't drunk. He said, because I was in the car with him. Now, he was the eyewitness. He said, I was his right-hand man. I traveled with him everywhere he went. And he said, I was in that car with him, and he was not drunk. It was the locals that were trying to get him out of the city, because everywhere these guys went, even with Oral Roberts, they would come and shut down his meetings. He'd have to leave and go somewhere else. So there was a lot of persecution with these tent revivals. And remember, they fought police, they fought traffic, they fought farmers, they fought doctors, because doctors didn't. Now, here's another thing I want to say, because let me just sidebar that with, as we get closer to where we are now, television's coming into play. This guy has a lot of videos. So if you want to go on YouTube and type in his name, A.A. Allen, you're going to watch a lot of healings and a lot of old black and white clips of everything that we're talking about. And now, this one miracle, I don't know if they were able to get a clip. I'm sure they have it, because it would obviously be on there. But anyway, so R.W. Schambach joins Allen's team, becomes the right-hand man. And after the Knoxville incident, the controversy still followed him, but the crowds continued to come, and the miracles continued to happen. It didn't stop. So it came down to, if you believed it, you wouldn't come to his meetings. If you didn't believe it, you'd come to his meetings. And there were some said, I don't care, I just want healed, I just want delivered, I just want whatever, and they'd come to the meetings. Well, here's another one. There was a guy who all his life had alligator skin. And right in front of everybody's eyes, those scales just fell right off, and his skin was like a baby skin. Another one, now this is the one that got him a little bit of advertisement. So he had that radio broadcast. So this guy's driving, and he had something wrong with him, that he lost his toe, a couple other things was going on with him. And so he's driving, and as he's listening to this broadcast of A.A. Allen, the power of God comes in that car. He pulls over, and he grows a toe in his car. Now this is documented. It's the X-rays, everything has been done, because Allen wants to take this documentation and put it in Los Angeles papers, because I think this was in California, and do a front page ad, because he's got the goods. We've got proof this man's The doctors have x-rays of him with no toe and now with a toe. Well, they weren't going to have it because that would promote what they were against. And so instead they flipped the narrative and made it look like he was a crazy guy. He said, hey, you know what? I still got on the front page. It was a $25,000 ad. I got it for free. Negative advertisement, which only made the crowds even grow more. So with his ministry came the controversy. And there were many more woes, really not worth to get into, except he has a run-in with the IRS. Him and his wife get separated. They don't get divorced, they just get separated. And because she's heavily involved in what she's doing. He's traveling by himself, but with R.W. Shambach, heavily doing what he's doing, and both are extremely busy serving the Lord. Now, many close friends at this time said had he not died early, they easily would more than likely have gotten back together. So by 1969, he becomes a very sick man. He's got arthritis through his body, especially into his knees, and he's in severe pain. Now, this pain started in the mid-50s. Now, here's where I'm just going to tell you what I've heard a lot, and so I'm going to just share what I kind of think may have happened with him. He died in 1970 at 59 years old, not of chronic alcoholism. Okay, it's acute alcoholism, and the difference is chronic is you've been drinking all your life, and the liver gives out and so forth and so on. Acute, it means basically that you don't drink for a long time, and then you have a slip up, and then you binge. Then you're done, and then the fatty tissue on the liver or whatever, it kind of heals itself, and then it's fine because you're not doing it all the time. Binge drinking is you may go 4 or 5 and you just go at it. And so what they believe happened was because of the pain, and he was also on, and this is all in an autopsy. All this is all autopsy in Los Angeles. So this is not anything made up. Is that he had a bunch of pills from the doctor, pain pills from the doctor. Obviously that wasn't working, and he thought if he just drank on top of those pain pills, which many have done and have died from doing that, they believe that's basically what happened. Because prior to that, he's there in a hotel room. The next day is his knee surgery. They're going to replace his knee. And I guess he was in so much pain that he thought that the alcohol would kill the pain, but ended up taking his life. So, that kind of stuff. But the thing that amazes me is, however you look at this, whether he was an alcoholic, whether he wasn't, or he just binge drank for the pain, what have you, God still used the guy in the miraculous. And so one of the things one of the takeaways I want to do with this is that every one of these guys had problems, and women. There was some scandal. There was definitely weakness in all of them, and yet God never stopped using them. And there's something to that, because we're brought up, and I guarantee these guys didn't believe. If A.A. Allen heard that Oral Roberts was doing something, he probably would have attacked him and said, "It's a Here's where it goes. We can't believe that God can use weak people with problems in the miraculous, or in any way, shape, or form for that matter. And if He does, and it looks like that He does, we call it demonic. Well, it can't be God. He's an alcoholic. So all those miracles, therefore, were demonic. As if God is that much of a stringent God that everybody has to be 100% perfect before they can be used. And that's not the case, because He used His disciples who weren't perfect. He used Paul, who wasn't perfect. God's into using imperfect people. And religion makes you think that until you're perfect, you can't be used, and therefore you're never going to get perfect, so you're never going to be used. And so we never step out because, well, who am I? Who am I? So we have to have this revelation of the gift of righteousness. You got to get this. It's not your righteousness. These men were able to do, and women, were able to do what they do with their weakness, with their sins, with their hang-ups, with all that they had going on that caused controversy or caused scandal. They were able to be used by God because when God looked at them, He looked at them as the righteousness of Christ. Not as where they're at. Paul says, know no man after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Don't know them after their weakness. Know them who they are in Christ and what Christ has done for them and through them by way of the finished work. That's why these men were qualified. God qualified them by the blood and women. He qualified them. And He's qualified you. It doesn't matter. I mean, some of these next week, well, not next week, but the week after, we're going to look at Catherine Coleman, and she's not only a woman, she's going to be a divorced woman. And wait till you hear her story. And God's like, okay, everybody's writing her off, and God says, watch what I do. And all of a sudden, miracles are taking place. She wasn't even looking for miracles. She wasn't looking for healing. All she was an evangelist that got people saved. And then all of a sudden, boom, healings were taking place. And she had no control over it. And then it just took off. But as a divorcee. So that doesn't mean God loves divorce and He loves it when we're drunk and we're taking pills and we're fornicating. No, He's not condoning any of that. But He's not judging our sin against us because He laid it on Christ. Christ took our sin. So now we become the righteousness of God, especially not just forensic, but in union. And just in the union aspect of it. So it's not just a positional righteousness, it's an actual true righteousness because we are partakers of His divine nature. What's true of Him is true of us. And that's with everything according to Christ across the board. So those are just some takeaways. And I'm short today because I want to watch this video. So I'm not going to be doing this live, so we're going to be cutting it here. But I want to encourage everybody that are watching either by live Facebook or watching this, go to YouTube. Everybody's got a YouTube app. And the video that we're going to be looking at here as soon as we shut off tonight is search on YouTube R.W. Schambach and then type in A.A. Allen. R.W. Schambach and A.A. Allen, and look for the 26 diseases, 26 curable diseases or something like that. But it's 13 minutes. You'll know you have the right clip because it'll say something about 26 diseases and it's 13 minutes. And check that video out because that's what we're going to be watching here. So if you want to go ahead and just shut us off, and we'll go ahead and set that up now.